And we are live. Good morning. I'd like to start by offering a warm welcome to everyone joining us today for what promises to be an extremely relevant and hopefully illuminating discussion on enterprise data architecture modernization, or more specifically, how data warehouse automation can enable legacy data architectures to deliver results in an environment where the need for accurate and timely business intelligence is greater now than ever before. My name is Adnan Sami Khan, and I handle product documentation here at Astera. That means that I help to put together and publish many of the white papers, blogs, and support articles you can find on our website. With me today will be our COO, Jay Mishra. Jay has over as well as data integration methodologies, and he's currently responsible for leading product development here at Astera. Basically, if there's anyone who understands how valuable this technology can prove and just how difficult it is to get right, then it's him. Thanks for joining us, Jay.
Thank you, Adnan, and good morning, everyone. So as you mentioned, data warehouse design and development as a topic has been at the forefront of our thinking for the past couple of years now. And our fixation on this topic is by no means unique. Actually, a report published by Allied Market Research this year values the global market share for data warehousing at about $18.6 billion. And it's expected to double by year 2025. These numbers really aren't surprising to anybody who is involved in the reporting and analytics process. Today, most businesses operate in a landscape where a split-second delay in decision-making can have a real dollar and cent implications on their bottom line. Whether you're trying to optimize stock levels, anticipate customer demands, or you're working to mitigate financial risks, you need a reliable and consolidated source of truth. And that's what a real data warehouse should ideally provide. But we'll get more into that later, I'm sure.
Yeah, great introduction to the topic there, Jay. And yes, we will definitely be circling back to all of your points later on. Speaking of which, I think your overview leads us perfectly into our first poll question of this webinar, which is, does your organization currently operate a data warehouse? Now, we have three options for this particular poll. Option A is no, but we are interested in setting one up. B, yes, we currently operate a data warehouse. And C, yes, we operate multiple data warehouses. So I know that this must seem like a relative no-brainer for most people, but you'd be surprised at how many organizations are currently working without any dedicated BI structures in place. So if you can see that survey opened up, just click any of the three options and we'll get a sense of how accurate our statistics really are and how much they reflect your reality. So go ahead and check that out. And I'll give that about 3 more seconds and we'll go ahead and finish up voting there. Okay. So what I'm seeing here is a majority in favor of no, but we're interested in setting one up, which is awesome. That aligns perfectly with what we're looking to accomplish in this webinar, basically is showing you how to create a modern data architecture and indeed why that is necessary. And a few of you already operating a data warehouse, which is great as well. I'm sure the best practices we cover here will be helpful to you as well. Okay. Awesome, 80% in favor, so definitely the balance tilted one way by the end. Awesome, so I think we're ready to move on with our discussion, but before we continue, there's just a bit of housekeeping that I'll get out of the way. First, this conversation is being recorded and the footage will be made available on BrightTalk, as well as on our website at astera.com. So if you miss anything, you can always go back and catch it again. Second, while we will be looking to cover data warehouse automation in as much depth as possible, I'm sure many of you will have questions of your own. So just make sure to type them into the chat box and Jay will make sure to get to as many of them as possible at the end of the webinar. With that out of the way, let's go ahead and get started with our discussion, launch right into the traditional data warehouse. Now, I'm sure you're all familiar with the traditional data warehouse and others. In this case, we're talking about a subject-oriented business repository that houses structured forms of data collected from various operational systems. This data is generally captured at uniform intervals and further cleansed to reduce the risk of inaccurate reporting. However, records are not modified in any other way, as they're meant to provide a precise picture of each operation at a specific point. Over time, these records will show a complete historical view of your organization's activities over a given period, of course, ideally. Up until the 90s, this architecture required little updating. After all, when you're dealing with relatively simple and repetitive business questions based around predictable operational data, like say, how many products did we sell last year, there really isn't a need for flexibility in your data warehouse. So while you might have been required to dedicate a team of programmers and database administrators to manually code extraction processes for each source system, and then design an entire pipeline, those lead times and budget overruns were justified by the fact that these projects were generally only undertaken during the initial development of a data warehouse. Cut to 2019, and the traditional model is just no longer feasible. Today, organizations in every industry are dealing with an unprecedented variety, velocity, and volume of data. So alongside your transactional sources, you've got to deal with everything from JSON and XML to real-time logs extracted from IoT systems, CSV files, and streaming data picked up from cloud APIs connected to your CRM or social media. Now, critically, much of that information is available to clients and customers as well. So the people purchasing your products and services, they're far better informed and more than capable of switching to a competitor that meets their requirements should the need arise. Now, in this ultra-competitive operating environment, organizations simply have to modernize their data architecture or risk falling hopelessly behind. Now, modernization encompasses a number of different aspects, right? So first of all, you need to be able to efficiently collect both internal and external streams of data, which I alluded to before. You also need to be able to perform various types of analytics on this data. Now that includes simple descriptive analytics, predictive analytics, which includes things like statistical modeling, and finally prescriptive analytics, which is where things like data training and machine learning come into play, which are sort of words du jour nowadays in the industry. Third, you need to be able to effectively reuse your data with minimum duplication. Fourth, your data architecture should be adaptable to the latest storage, reporting, and analytics technologies. Your data should be made available to all end users. In other words, your frontline manager shouldn't have to go on a wild goose chase through your data architecture to find up-to-date sales information, nor should they need to go into your source systems to figure out how to extract specific records. Finally, you need to ensure that your existing architecture can scale and adapt to these rapidly evolving requirements. Now, that's a theory at play, but I do want to bring in Jay here to address the on-ground reality. Jay, as someone who's on the front line, talking to clients with all kinds of use cases and integration challenges, do these issues ring true to you? I'd really love to hear your thoughts.
Definitely. So to start with, I think that all of the issues that you listed, there are definitely an accurate reflection on what we have witnessed on past data warehousing projects. But from my experience on a broader level, most clients in this space are concerned with a few key factors. Let's start with the first one. That is, they want to be able to migrate large volumes of heterogeneous data without hurting the performance of their operational systems. Remember, if you want to be able to effectively handle the 3 V's, then your architecture must be designed to support an array of data sources, specifications, and consumption methods. Of course, bringing together these requirements in a complete and cohesive manner is easier said than done. Next, they want to maximize time to value, which means that their data warehousing architecture has to provide insight quickly and consistently. In order to do this, we have to be able to address potential bottlenecks, such as extraction of data from source to staging tables, then the actual cleansing and preparation of data in the staging layer. And finally, the time taken to deliver data for business consumers. In this case, consumption includes both query execution as well as the processing involved in presenting the data in a reportable format for end users. As far as use cases go, they really run the gamut. In the insurance industry, we have seen clients build accurate risk analysis systems by integrating data from account receivables and let's say combine it with the customer profiles from either their marketing automation systems or CRM systems. You mentioned predictive analytics. A good use case we have seen for that is in what-if style data modeling. So in this example, you see how POS transactional data and historical financial reports can be integrated with shipment details from the WMS. This data set is then loaded into an analytics platform for demand forecasting for various scenarios. Of course, these are just a few ways that organizations are making use of more agile data architecture, but it's a good barometer for the way things are headed.
Great stuff there, Jay. I also think that sets up our next poll question really well. Once again, I'm really curious to get our audience's input on what kind of issues they deal with in their day-to-day operations. So with that in mind, here's the poll question, our second one of the day. It's, what is your organization's biggest data challenge? Once again, we've got 5 options there for you to choose from. The first is data governance, which we will be getting to later. Enabling business users to explore and derive insight from relevant data. Delivering critical data to decision makers in a timely manner. Extracting and loading large volumes of data. And merging big data with other structured data sources. So those are the 5 options. I think we pretty much cover a good cross-section of the type of challenges that you would most likely be facing. Let's go ahead and see what people are saying in regards to these challenges. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and leave that poll open for about another 30 seconds. All right, so it seems like a 50-50 split between enabling business users to explore and derive insights from relevant data, which is, you know, a big problem. Accessibility and availability, we will be getting to that later, don't you worry. So hopefully we can offer some potential ways to solve that challenge. And then the other one we have is merging big data with other structured data sources. Now that's where, you know, things like the data lake and other technologies might come into play. Again, we will be dealing with that later in the webinar. So without, you know, any further hesitation, let's go on and move to data lake versus data warehouse. So we've talked a lot about challenges, but what about solutions? Now, a lot of people in this space will claim that the answers to their data problems lie in the data lake rather than an updated data warehouse architecture. Jay, where do you fall in the data lake versus data warehouse divide, or do you indeed believe that there is an inherent contradiction between these two models?
So this is an important question because if we go back about 4 to 5 years, there was definitely a feeling that open source technologies such as Hadoop were far better suited to the demands of this emerging big data environment, which makes sense on the surface. Platforms like Hadoop or NoSQL offer high performance distributed architecture that is completely schemaless. This architecture can ingest a structured, semi-structured, or even unstructured data with equal ease. And in turn, that data can be consumed in a variety of ways. Now, in the ensuing years, some of those expectations have been tempered by reality. Because the fact is that without context, even the most pertinent data can be rendered irrelevant. In other words, business users need to be able to understand where particular information is located, where it comes from, what it means, and who owns it, if they really want to derive any real insights from it. Without a proper structure or means of data management, those objectives are really not possible to meet. Of course, these issues won't come as a surprise to anyone in the industry. As early as, I believe, 2014, Gartner surveys indicated that just about 3% of IT leaders really believed that big data or in-memory systems could really replace their existing data warehouse infrastructure. I think when we are discussing this topic, it is also important to note that many of these organizations have spent significantly on their existing hardware and software. So ripping out all of this infrastructure and investing heavily in data lake really isn't a feasible solution. Instead, what we are seeing is increasingly a hybrid model is being adopted that allows for more adaptable data architecture. So for your day-to-day decision-making, reporting, and trend analysis, you still need to have your structured EDW. But if you are monitoring streaming processes or running resource-heavy analytics, a data lake repository may be more appropriate. At the same time, you still need more data marts in place to support function-specific queries. Of all these platforms, we need to, actually these both types of platforms, they need to be consolidated into a single source of truth as well. So you likely need some form of a data virtualization layer. How you put together these elements depends entirely on your organization's operations and requirements moving forward.
Definitely, Jay. I really don't think that we can advocate for any kind of definitive solutions, but I am really interested to find out what kind of deployments our audience is using. So here's our third poll question, right on cue. What is the predominant data architecture of your organization? So again, 5 options: a virtual integrated DW or real-time DW. That sort of goes back to Rick Vanderland's white papers and webinars on the logical data warehouse. I don't know if any of you've caught that. Then there's an architecture that integrates data warehouse technology alongside a data lake and multiple data marts. We alluded that before in our what-if scenario. Multiple independent data warehouses, a single central DW with multiple data marts, or an entirely data lake-based architecture. So let's go ahead and see what kind of deployments our audience is working with there. I'm going to go ahead and give about 20 seconds for more votes to come in, and then we'll check out the results. Okay, so it seems 100% went for the hybrid deployments that we were talking about, which is great, which means that our own theory and practical experience reflects what's really going on in the marketplace, which is great. That being said, I'm sure many of you will have other deployments at work, and really this webinar will be helpful to anybody looking to get into this space. So let's go ahead and move on to some more aspects of the modern data architecture. So we've really tried to pinpoint what a so-called modern data architecture is all about so far. And I think we've identified that it needs to be able to scale quickly. It must integrate multiple storage and processing platforms. It must be able to deal with all forms of data. And perhaps most importantly, it needs to be agile enough to adapt to changing business conditions without a lengthy period of investment, planning, and rebuilding. Now, I think that all of these requirements can be fulfilled in one way or another through data warehouse automation. Now, in case you aren't familiar with the term, this basically refers to automating many of the repeatable steps involved in data warehouse design and deployment. Now, Jay, I know you've been in the trenches helping to bring our own data warehouse automation solution to market over the past couple of years, so I'm sure you can provide a more in-depth overview of what our technology really has to offer.
Thanks, Adnan. So for us, data warehouse automation means automating many of the time and resource-intensive tasks involved. So that covers everything from designing data models to building ETL jobs to consumption by the end user. With Data Warehouse Builder, we are looking to deliver on these objectives in a few ways. First things first, let's deal with extracting and retrieving your data. Because you don't want to rely on manual coding or custom API consumption when you're working with a vast array of data sources. With DWB, all of that is available in a simple drag and drop user interface. Secondly, you need to be able to prepare your data, which means cleansing, standardizing, correlating, and finally integrating your data sets. All possible through our intelligent drag and drop transformations. Third, and the most important one, is the population of facts and dimensions in your data warehouse. So if you have a dimensional model, you need to make sure that the facts and dimensions are receiving data and the jobs are built properly. To do so, you need to match each entity in your dimensional model with a corresponding source, sometimes multiple sources. In DWB, we accomplish this using our load settings feature. In the load settings window, user can specify mapping at the data model level and decide how a fact or dimension is going to be receiving data from sources. So the mapping happens at a different level altogether. Once the required fields have been mapped, integration flows are generated for each entity automatically with one button click. An integration flow contains all the necessary information required to load a fact, dimension, or even an aggregate. When these flows are executed, data is taken from the source and processed through the necessary transformations before being loaded into the relevant tables in the warehouse. Here, appropriate surrogate keys, business keys will be assigned, and lookups will be performed as defined during the modeling stage. Under normal circumstances, you would need to painstakingly build hundreds, if not thousands, of individual ETL pipelines that I just described to accomplish this task manually. Now, all that work is automated using our toolset. Fourth is delivery and consumption. Basically, you want to ensure that your data can get into the hands of your decision makers who can use it to answer their pressing business needs or business questions. Again, DWB allows you to publish to a range of different database systems, including Microsoft SQL Server, Oracle, PostgreSQL, and MySQL, to name a few, as well as cloud databases such as Azure and Redshift. You can also deliver data to web services using RESTful APIs or SOAP API. Also, we have a virtualization functionality that allows end users to access data without having to worry about the underlying. And finally, we offer native support for leading BI tools, such as Power BI and Tableau.
Thanks, Jay. So just briefly, you did touch upon slowly changing dimensions there in your answer, and dimension lookups as well. I'm just curious, could you extrapolate a little more on how DWB will help with these often neglected tasks of data warehouse maintenance?
Sure. So obviously, one of the main tasks involved in data warehouse maintenance is identifying how updates, deletions, and additions are treated in the dimension tables. After all, this architecture is meant to provide a historical view of your enterprise data. So this is defined using slowly changing dimensions, and the EDWB will support multiple SCD handling techniques, including SCD Type 1, Type 2, Type 3, and Type 6. Another key element of data warehouse maintenance is dimension lookups. So while loading facts, surrogate keys for attributes are needed to be looked up from the corresponding dimension tables. In DWB, we have added a dedicated dimension lookup functionality. It's actually a transformation that automatically cross-references every business key against the relevant dimension and converts it into an appropriate surrogate key and loads it.
Awesome stuff there, Jay. So we've got a broad overview of what our technology can do, but I think the pressing question on our audience's mind is how much benefit does that really offer? In other words, how does something like DWB help an organization resolve their pressing data challenges? Seems to be the question in the air. Jay, I'm going to go ahead and hand this over to you. What benefits does data warehouse automation and specifically Astera Data Warehouse Builder really provide for businesses?
Great question, Adnan. Potentially a tough one. So let me answer it as best as I can. So the key behind the DWB design was that we wanted to provide clients with a more resource-efficient and scalable methods. I mean, obviously, there are some places where you want to have the ability to customize, but we want to be able to complement those areas by automating those repetitive bottleneck processes wherever possible. So what this does is that it immediately reduces the time spent on data warehouse development and deployment. That means your key decision makers are able to get their hands on key insights that much faster, which again goes back to the concept of time to value, a key feature for any modern data architecture. Also, as a result of automation, your technical team no longer needs to involve itself in the nitty-gritty of ETL coding or in the thankless task of data preparation. Now they can dedicate more time to creating customized reporting and analytics, and ultimately deliver more accurate and targeted business intelligence. Remember, when you're using an automated data warehousing solution, you don't need to worry about continuous stress testing your deployments to ensure that they can keep up with incoming volumes of data. DWB is designed to produce error-free metadata-based solutions automatically. So I would definitely add consistency and quality to the advantages offered by data warehousing automation. Finally, I think accessibility is a huge advantage of our technology. Our product comes with a complete data virtualization functionality for data delivery to the end users. It allows business users to set up connections to a virtual layer of data without any specific training, and then use the data for analytics or any other downstream processes without having to worry about how the data is being fetched.
All right. Once again, I think a lot of value packed into that answer there, Jay. But I do just want to go back to your point about scalability there, because traditionally, one of the biggest criticisms levied at the data warehouse or the traditional data warehouse architecture has been its reliance on hardware. So before, I touched on the fact that organizations are now utilizing these hybrid architectures that use both cloud-based storage systems and applications, as well as on-premise technology. But the fact remains that data volumes are continuing to grow, which I'm sure everyone in the audience is aware of. So even though processing capacity has improved exponentially in recent years, and networking has evolved to facilitate near real-time migrations to and from the data warehouse, at some point, organizations will have to make additional capital investments to keep up with their continuously expanding requirements. So Jay, on the software side, what can an automation solution like Astera DWB to bridge that particular pain point for our clients?
Great question, Adnan. So obviously, once you start dealing with hundreds of sources and terabytes of data moving through your data flow pipeline, then performance is always going to be a significant issue. So there isn't going to be a one-size-fits-all solution to these problems. At some point, additional IT investment may well be necessary. But from our end, we have moved forward in a number of ways to optimize our solution for complex and high-volume architectures. So the Astera DWB is built on the same engine as our existing industrial-strength ETL engine, Enterprise. This is a multi-threaded parallel processing engine that ensures minimal blocking and starvation of threads, thus delivering a high degree of parallelism. When combined with today's multi-core and multi-processor hardware, it is capable of increasing data throughput in direct proportion to increase in processing power. This ensures continued scalability of the data warehouse and all related ETL or ELT processes. Within the product itself, we have a number of functionalities that are designed to aid in these type of operations, starting with push-down optimization mode, PDO. This feature leverages the inherent computing capacity of a high-performance database engine to perform data processing functions within the source or target database. This means that data migration to a staging area can be bypassed altogether. Currently, we support PDO for Microsoft SQL Server, PostgreSQL, Oracle, IBM DB2, and MySQL. In push-down mode, all transformations, along with the reading, of course, or writing, that would be performed otherwise in product are automatically translated into relevant database native SQL code. In other words, we generate an equivalent of an integration flow that includes reading, writing, and transforming. That is all converted to native SQL code and pushed down to the database itself. And that execution happens at the database itself. As a result, this process is way faster than traditional ETL. As a result, everything from structured operational data and performance metrics to cloud-based and API data can be loaded and transformed with utmost efficiency. Data virtualization, that is another key functionality that can significantly reduce the strain on your IT resources. In a virtualized environment, disparate data sources are simply plugged into a virtual data model and published as a virtual database. A data mart can be carved out and made available for querying in a matter of minutes from this virtual layer. As a result, consumers no longer need to develop complex scripts to search physical repositories for the specific records they need, nor must they secure credentials from IT for each database that they need to view. Instead, any queries made against the virtual database will be matched to source systems directly that contain the requested data, and the resulting views will be shown in the virtual layer without any physical movement of data. This approach makes the traditional EDW far more agile, while still providing necessary accessibility to the users across the enterprise. In cases where users feel that their data flows are executed in, let's say, suboptimal manner, we have introduced a job optimizer that allows hints to be entered in the scheduler screen for each integration flow. In a recent use case, we saw one of our clients was able to employ optimizer hints to enable additional degrees of parallelism to the data flows, and they were able to achieve multifold performance enhancement. The job optimizer will also be actually helpful during the data warehouse loading process when dimension tables from different sources are joined to a fact table. In these instances, the user can make use of SQL hints to decide what gets staged and how. Again, these are some of the optimizations available, and I'm sure we will have plenty of time to go deeper into these features in future webinars.
Thanks, Jay. I think that's definitely plenty for listeners to chew on for the moment, so I'm going to go ahead and give you a break. I think you covered a lot there. I also want to take this opportunity to segue into our final poll question for listeners, which is relevant, and I'll explain that in a second, why it's relevant. The fourth poll question is, do you currently have any solutions in place to ensure quality, accuracy, and relevancy across your data-related processes? This is three options here. No, but we're exploring solutions. Yes, but they need improvement. Or no, we have no issues with data management, in which case, kudos to you, because that's definitely something that a lot of companies are struggling with nowadays. So let's go ahead and see what our audience is saying on that particular issue. I'm just going to leave that poll open for maybe about 20 more seconds, just so we can get as many votes as possible and get as wide a cross-section of results as possible before we move on and I explain why this particular question right now. All right, so it seems pretty much well, most people are in agreement that they're currently exploring solutions. Small section of the audience there has an existing solution in place, but they need improvement, which is definitely par for the course, I think. So the reason I asked this particular question is because I really wanted to get to data governance, which is becoming such a hot button issue for companies nowadays, especially those operating in the financial services, healthcare, and digital services sectors. Now, obviously, this is a pretty vast topic, and it can't be solved by technology alone. But in terms of the data warehouse specifically, I did want to know how technologies like DWB can go about answering key concerns like data availability. That's ensuring that the right data is being collected and that it's being made available to the right users. Data consistency, so that's making sure that data is reliable and formatted for sharing across different interest groups. Data redundancy, implementing processes for removing obsolete, trivial, or duplicated data. Data reporting, ensuring that data is being forwarded to the right analytics and reporting systems so that the correct metrics are being applied to them. And finally, security and compliance. So that's ensuring that data management is in line with all applicable regulatory standards. So Jay, as far as data governance goes, to clients that are really looking to bring some structure and governance and control to their data environment.
Okay, I'm glad we had time to get to this topic because data governance we have looked to emphasize in our releases over the past couple of years. I think we are all familiar with the concept of garbage in and garbage out, which is especially pertinent when you have massive volumes of data moving through your system. Add in a tightening regulatory environment, and the quality, accuracy, and availability of critical data is perhaps more important than ever before. So let me start addressing those concerns point by point. As far as making the right data available, I believe that a careful application of transformations can help achieve that goal. Can you move to the next slide, please?
Yep, so we're on the next slide.
Okay, so once you have set up connections to relevant sources, you can consolidate them into a single output object using a union. From there, you can apply a system of records using a merge transformation to select the most reliable source for each field. There we go. I think the screen was a bit slow. So I was talking about, yes, using merge transformation for system of records. So for example, loading customer addresses supplied from marketing database as opposed to your CRM data. In terms of consistency and reliability, DWB provides enterprise users with intelligent data quality rule transformations. These features automatically verify input data sets based on custom rules. So as you can see on the screen, this is our system of records implementation, and where you can pretty much combine any two data sources. In this screen, we are looking at the data quality, where you can specify your custom business rules to check the quality of data. This is all rule-based, and rules can be written by the user. On the other hand, if you're trying to review your source data for quality issues or you need to correct, let's say, event ETL processes, then the data profiling transformation is equally essential. DWB's profiling capabilities allow you to drill into your data to find out how many records are failing for standard checks due to missing, duplicate, or incomplete information. Again, users can set the level of detail they want to see on these results. You can always dig deeper into the data to find out where the errors are coming and how to fix them. You can complete your quality controlled data flow pipeline by outputting your cleansed records to a destination of your choice. You can also set up additional record level or custom level logs for your outputs. So you have an auditable log for each of these jobs. Security and compliance is another key module of DWB. I think we touched upon it in some depth in our last webinar, and I'm sure we will do it. We will do so again. But just briefly, we are focusing our efforts in this space on three main areas. And let's have a look at the security module. In terms of security, the three areas are going to be secure domain communication, that is between client and server over TCP and IP and HTTP protocols. And second is user authentication via better token authentication. And third is role-based access control via an intuitive user management and access control dashboard. So this allows us to completely control the access of functionality in the product and also make sure that the access is secured. So these enhancements will help administrators prevent unauthorized access to data management workflows and ensure access policies for both internal and remote users are followed.
Okay, so I think that was data governance in as much depth as we could cover, given the time constraints here. But thank you, Jay. Very illuminating from start to end there. I think we managed to hit on many of the pain points and challenges affecting enterprise data architectures today, or I hope we did at least. I also hope that we were able to demonstrate exactly why there is a pressing need to really push forward and evolve if your organization hopes to meet the data challenges of tomorrow. With that being said, we would love to hear your thoughts on the topic. We've been looking over your questions, and there are definitely some interesting ones being sent in. So let's go ahead and move to the question and answer session point of this webinar, and we will go ahead and see what people are saying here. All right, so I do see one question here, which is, how much time does this DWB solution save for integrations of, let's say, data from 25 different CRMs and databases and other sources into a data warehouse, considering that there are several data quality checks to be applied in there? Just an estimate would be fine. So, Jay, would you like me to repeat that one more time just so you get that?
Sure, if you could. Thank you.
So how much time does this WB solution save for integrations of, let's say, data from 25 different CRMs and databases and other sources into a data warehouse, considering that there are several data quality checks to be applied in there? Just an estimate would be fine.
Absolutely. So I'm assuming that we are talking about 25 different CRM systems and not 25 entities inside one CRM system. So assuming that we are talking about 25 different applications, CRM applications we are dealing with as sources. So I would focus on one part of DWB, that is automatic generation of flows. So the way it works is, in traditional ETL, if you want to, let's say, get customers' data from your CRM system into, let's say, a dimension in your dimensional model in your data warehouse, for that mapping itself, you have to get your source, configure it, map all the fields, apply your data quality checks and whatnot, and then you run the job. So that is one ETL job. You have to repeat the same process for each of the entities in the entire CRM, one CRM instance. Then if you're looking at 25, that is 25 times more of that work. Whereas using our model, the way it works is you do the mapping at a different level altogether. So the way it works is we start with creating a virtual data model, a model of your source. So with a simple point and click, our application is able to reverse engineer your source system and figure out how the entities are related to each other. And in the same way, we have reverse engineered, or you can actually design from scratch your data model for destination. Now the mapping actually is provided at the data model level itself. So there you specify which entity from source or a combination of entities from source map to which entity in destination. So basically, at the highest level, you define the relationship among source and destination entities. And then with one button click, the application is able to generate all the ETL jobs for all the entities in destination. So you can see that, let's say that you have 25 or 30 different entities in one CRM. Instead of doing it one by one, 25 times over, with one button click, you're generating all 25 jobs. So it is basically, you can see that the gain is pretty much 25 times if you're looking at just a simple CRM with the 25 entities that you want to move to destination. So, and of course, if you want to customize it, you have to go through still take your generated flows and make the changes that you need to do. So that is still going to happen. But still, in the beginning, when you are generating or when you're creating these flows, that part is completely automated. So I would say the gain is going to be not in 10, 20, 30% range. You're looking at 1:25 if you're looking at just a simple case of 25 entities in your destination. Hopefully that
Awesome.
makes sense.
I think that made sense, Jay. Just a couple more questions as well that we have here. Here's another one that I think you might have a good take on. How is data capture handled in Data Warehouse Builder? Does your product allow for real-time CDC, or is it in mini batches? That's another question.
Definitely. So we support all of the three. So we do have built-in connectors to connect to batch sources. For example, you want to fetch data from, let's say, a standard database table, and you want to load the entire table. That is standard functionality. And we do support actually reading from all relational sources, databases, files. We have pretty strong suite of connectors for reading data from structured, semi-structured, and unstructured files. We have connectors to go to APIs as well. So you can make, you can basically, when you're designing the data flow, you can read in small batch mode, or you can make it real time as well, where depending on the need, you can run the schedules. And the schedules, we have a continuous schedule. That means you are continuously going to the source and fetching the data in conjunction with CDC. So CDC is also built in, and CDC we support actually 3 different flavors. We can go into details of that maybe on a different platform, and we can look into that. But just to keep it brief, we have 3 different ways to support CDC. And using CDC, you are able to fetch only the incremental changes in the source and able to bring it to the system. And from the scheduling side, you can make it either batch mode or real-time mode.
Awesome. Here's another one that I'd like to bring up. Can the user write their own rules for any kind of data validation if required? And are there any limitations on the number of lines that the user can input for data validation rules?
Great question. So data validation is served using our data quality rules. And data quality rules are based on our own rules engine, where you can write customized business rules. And these rules can be simple, such as you're checking, let's say the value is empty, the value is null, or they can be very, very complex. They can have conditionals. You can use if, then, else kind of logic, or you can check if the one field is there, then other field must be there, so dependencies and so on and so forth. So you can create any kind of complex rule to check the quality of data. And there is no limit on how complex the rule is and how many rules you want to apply on the same data set. So that's how we support data quality rules. And data quality rules can be applied in any stage of the data flow pipeline. So whether you want to apply the rule right after reading the data, or you want to apply the rules somewhere in the middle, or you want to apply the rules just before writing into destination, it's all up to you. And also after applying rules, we have a way to handle that. How do you, what do you do with the data that is not meeting your quality standards? Whether you want to drop those records, move them to a separate, let's say, another table, another file, or you want to apply another process to try to correct the data that is not meeting your standards. So all of that is configurable and available to the user.
Okay, thank you, Jay. Last question, I think then we'll wrap things up, is does DWB support extraction and loading from email servers? Is there any kind of decryption feature available? That's the last question.
So email servers, definitely yes. We do support both IMAP and POP3 protocols. So you can go to any email server and download your messages based on your own filters. So for example, you want to periodically go to email server and check only the new emails since last visit, and download those emails. And in fact, not only the email, you can download the attachments as well. So all parts of email, the subject, the email body, attachments, you can process any of those in the same designer that you are using for other sources. And that's how you can use the email as a source. Coming to decryption and encryption, that is something that is actually outside the email source, but you can use something that we have built in, or you can have your own encryptors and decryptors that if you want to use from outside, we have a way to use that.
Okay, Jay, thank you so much for your involvement here and all the answers you gave. Very illuminating once again. I'm sure that we were able to add a lot of value there. I think that about brings us to the end of our webinar, coming to the end of our discussion here. Again, if you would like to see a recording of all of the material that we covered here, you can go to astera.com/webinars. You can see a recorded version of the webinar there. We also have a lot of support documentation, blogs, articles, links to those available in the attachments and links section. We also have a demo of Data Warehouse Builder available for your download. Feel free to check that out, get a sense of how the product works for yourself. Other than that, I'm sure we'll have more webinars coming up. So if you think we weren't able to cover a certain aspect in depth, let me assure you that we will be covering everything and a lot more in the webinars to follow. So stay tuned for those. Thank you so much for everyone who tuned in, everyone for listening. Have a great evening. Have a great night. Goodbye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.